And it's not just people from here. I mean, I've had firefighters from Australia and Canada show up
Right.
on my fire.
Because we
So,
talk right here.
yeah.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Gettin 10-8. And on this episode, as you could tell by the thumbnail, this is the Wildland Firefighting edition. Now, at one point, Seth, one of my guests tonight on the show, works in the office with me, and he's a prescribed fire specialist there. He's one of our Wildland Firefighter Type 2s that works with prescribed fire. And he says, we need to have some Wildland Firefighting representation on the show. And I said, well, Seth, y'all don't get 10-8. You don't use 10 codes in wildland firefighting. But, I had somebody that asked me a bunch of questions about wildland firefighting because I mentioned that, we did that at work. And sure enough, I said, yep, you're right. I need to get somebody. So our pro from Dover that I got, the other guest on our show, is Mark Jamieson. Mark has got decades of experience in wildland firefighting. Not only did he do prescribed fire in the southeast where Seth and I are located, he's also gone out west and is going to talk about some of the fire situations that he's dealt with out there and the differences between the fires they have in the western part of the United States and the fires that we might have over here in the southeast of Mississippi. So without further ado, let's get started talking with these guys. Mark, Seth, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Seth, we talked about you being prescribed fire.
Yeah.
Let's. I happen to know you got a little busy yesterday. What were y'all doing yesterday with about 225 acres?
Yes, we burned a 225 acre block of longleaf that we had actually thinned a few months ago, and the burn did great. The winds were a little bit shifty on us at the very end. It was calling for a northeast wind, but at the very end it was blowing south. And the problem with that was Highway 98 runs north of that block a few miles ahead.
Right.
And so it was kind of sketchy starting out, but the fire break held and everything worked out fine.
Good deal. So that break that me and a couple of young men helped us clear with some backpack blowers, and that gully that y'all went down, I said, nope, after I broke my ankle, I'm not going down that hill.
That was a gully, wasn't it?
So Mark, you've dealt with, give us a little bit of your history, where you worked last, where you worked before that, and how you dealt with, because you've done both. Like I said, you've done wildland firefighting and prescribed fire.
Yeah, a little bit. My background is as a forester, and my first job was in Colorado in 1980, and we had a couple small wildfires there, so I got a taste of it. But then when I moved to Mississippi, I worked for the Mississippi Forestry Commission, and my county on the coast, Hancock County, was always in the top 5 of the number of wildfires every year. So I got ingrained in it pretty good, and I think I do pretty good at it, and I really enjoyed it. And from there, that led me into a federal job with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the U.S. Forest Service, and both of all those do a lot of prescribed burning along with wildfire suppression.
Right.
And then all that kind of led me into the incident command teams, and I'm on a type 1, or now it's I don't know, CC. I don't even know what it is now. It's past type 1. But we go all over the country as needed for wildfires or other incidents. It's not just fire. Well, I've gone a lot of hurricane recovery efforts and things like that.
Well, that was one of the things that I was going to lead into, because usually the guests that I have on this show are paramedics, firefighters that are structural firefighters, and police department personnel, law enforcement personnel. Well, the issue with them is, yeah, they use an incident command structure, but it's not quite like the ICS structure there's a difference between a structural firefighting incident command system and a wildland firefighting incident command system, in that usually in a structural firefighting, this is a shared agreement with other areas. So these firemen know each other. They're all pretty much local working a structure fire. They all use 10 codes, and they all know the 10 codes because they're all using it. Whereas in a wildland fire situation, that's not the case at all. You've got people coming in to fight a fire that you don't know, that you're
Oh yeah.
you're on a line with. So what are some of the differences with the communication? One, y'all aren't going to use 10 codes. You're going to speak as plainly as possible. What's the differences in the ICS command system that way too?
And I think, ICS expands and contracts as needed. And so when you're on a really large fire and you got 1,000 or 2,000 firefighters working on that fire, everybody's got to talk in plain text.
Right.
And you wouldn't think that that's hard, but there's a lot of dialects, even in the United States. And it's not just people from here. I mean, I've had firefighters from Australia and Canada show up on my fire.
Because we talk right here.
Yeah. It's just speaking.
Right.
Back when I started, we used to say Roger and all that, but Roger died, and we just say copy or affirmative or negative or hey, I need you to do this.
Right.
We just talk.
Well, and that's good, because you're taking out that. Well, what did they mean by? Well, is his 1037 the same as the 1037 from the place I came from? Because they aren't. They.
Yeah, I know. I knew. When I started, they had a little bit of that, but we got before I even learned it, I got away from it real quick, and they just went to plain text.
Right. Right.
So that's just talk to each other.
So you've been out west. Where are some of the places that you've been out west, and what was the type of fire that you dealt with there? What do you see as the biggest contrast to fires over here in the southeastern portion of the United States?
Well, that would be terrain. Around here is not Idaho flat.
Right.
Because I've been on fires about that steep in Idaho times. So that's it. And around here, somewhere there's a creek or a road that's going to make a natural break, not too far off.
That's right. You're right.
Out west, you got the distances farther, but it's not just out west.
Get that horsefly.
I'm sorry, I got a horsefly bugging me. It's that one I whacked earlier and I didn't kill him.
He said, you think you're something? I'm coming to get your ass now.
I'll get him.
Thought you were pretty big with that SWAT earlier, didn't you?
That's a success.
All right.
Well, I think I made him mad. Oh well, but it's not just out there, because I was in Virginia on a fire, or North Carolina too, not too recently, and the fire isn't in that building; it's over there and going that way.
Right,
and that's the biggest difference between wildland and structural. Ours is a lot of weather is involved with it. You got to be a weatherman, or at least paying attention to the weather, along with the fuels and the conditions that are driving things. And terrain has got a lot to do with it.
Let's talk about the weather. Let's talk about the weather. It's not just it's partly cloudy and it's going to be. Tell what you're looking for in weather, because the different effects that the different things have.
Like Seth said, the weather forecast was for one direction today, but it changed.
Right.
Well, the weatherman is often incorrect.
Correct.
Because the wind direction is important because that's what's going to push the fire. It's going to go that way. Terrain helps. Terrain affects that too, but your wind direction is important. Temperature, because when it's really cold, the fire is not going to want to burn so good. But then humidity is the biggest thing, and how long it's been since it rained, because that dries out your fuels. The fuels are getting drier and drier, and I'm sure that rain we missed, that front that came through yesterday, completely missed where Seth's works.
Right.
And south of Wiggins, where I'm living, south of here is it got a little bit of rain, but right here in north, nothing.
Right.
So, you had a dry front come through, your humidity's dropped, which is going to increase your fire behavior. And you got your winds, which is going to drive your fire. So, it's just, there's a lot that goes into it.
And a lot of people don't think about this, but over here in the Southeast, green stuff will burn.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially coconut grass. Especially coconut grass.
Invasive, but we got yopine and gallberry and tai and all those brush species have volatile oils in the leaves, so they heat up, and then it'll heat up a little bit, it'll start burning, then it'll go boom. It all goes up at once. Just like in my background here's got spruce and fir trees, they'll do that same thing.
Right.
You'll heat up that those leaves and needles enough just where it's off gassing, and then you'll see the gases actually catch fire, and it kind of has a nice little explosive thing, and it's where you get out, in those pictures there, you get crown fires, a tree fire moving from tree to tree to tree.
I gotta tell you, I think everybody that's worked prescribed fire has a little bit of firebug in them. We like when we're running that drip torch and watching how it's crawling through. But I got to tell you, one time I circled around a curve, and sure enough, I look, and a buddy of mine and his two guys that I worked with, they said, well, we're just going to do small block. It's too windy to do big block stuff. We can't get a permit. We're going to do some small block stuff, that's less than an acre. And they're on this patch that's about, I don't know, maybe a quarter acre, half acre, but it's longleaf pine stand. And as I turn the corner, I look, and ladder fuels in that wind had carried it right up, and it crowned and went across that whole dang thing. It wasn't 3 weeks later, they were out there with the saws cutting down all that timber, because they killed every one of those trees. They crowned it. Yeah, and you crown some 70-foot longleaf pines. You shouldn't have had that drip torch out there.
And that's pretty rare, and it's a time of year too. If they're actively growing and it's got that white new growth, they'll call it
candling.
If you heat it up when it's doing that, it will kill it.
Oh yeah.
But even small, but if it's not doing that, a lot of those trees would come back. Because burned, I've completely heated up the crowns, and there's not a green needle up there. Those trees, we got enough moisture, those trees survived. They're pretty tough species and very fire adapted.
Well, and that's one of the things that that those spruce and those firs, once they've had and got crowned, they're done for, right? They end up being your snags in the future.
Yeah, they're not coming back.
All right, they're your future snags.
But the western species like ponderosa pine is very similar to longleaf. So it's more fire adapted than most western species. So a lot of those will survive and come back, as long as it didn't get too hot.
Yeah. What are some of the biggest? What's some of the biggest fires that you've responded to out west? Do you remember the names of them?
Shoot. Yeah, you should have asked me. I got files, but no. The biggest one is actually in the panhandle of Texas. There was 3 fires, and one was small. It was only 40,000 acres.
That's small?
That was the small one. My fire was 120,000 acres. And the third fire, my buddy was the ops chief on it, and his was at right at 750,000 acres.
Wow.
Holy
And then in
crap.
Oklahoma, I've been on a 1,000,000 acre fire. It burned into Kansas a little bit. And out west in California and Idaho and Washington and
All right, so I'm
other
good. I'm
states,
gonna.
a 100,000 acre is not that small. That 200,000 acre fires quite
Yes.
often.
So what's your biggest fire here, like on the district here?
It, it just east of Highway 49 between the Biloxi rivers. I had about a 1,400 acre wildfire back in the 90s.
Okay.
And I know after Katrina, I know they had a 3,000 or 4,000 acre fire in Hancock County, but I had already went to Fish and Wildlife Service by then. But my buddy, I don't know if you were working when John Wallace was working there. He had to call me. How do you get into here, Mark? And I was actually on my way home from work, and I stopped and saw him, and I showed him the back roads in Hancock County. I mean, I worked in that county for 18 years, and there's probably not a road in that county that I didn't have a wildfire on at one time or another, because we would have 200 to 300 wildfires a year in Hancock County.
Now let me ask you about those wildfires. What was starting all of them? I know it wasn't lightning that started all those fires.
Like in the southeast, lightning will start a fire, but usually when we're having our thunderstorms, it's raining like crazy.
Right.
So lightning it'll happen, but it's very rare. And if you think you can throw a cigarette out a window, I want to see that happen, because that don't happen either. Unless the humidity is down in the low 20s, and fuels are really dry. Almost all of our fires in the southeast are human caused.
Purposely or not, huh?
Yeah, it could be an accident or it could not be. And I know, let me see, I started in Hancock County in 1986. And at that time, 80% of our fires, we called them arson. And then 20% were people accidentally let their trash fires get away from them.
Yeah.
Not watching it, just starting a fire and going, okay, that's good, and walking away, or not control it, not having a break.
Not having anywhere, or the hose. I can't tell you how many times the hose goes to the fire from the back of the house, but it doesn't go around behind the pile they're burning. It's not going to get out toward the house. It's going to get out behind them. And usually, like my house here, I got woods behind me, and if I let fire go that way, it's going into the trees, and I may have to call the Forestry Commission, not me. I just got home.
So, question for you, Mark:
Were you? I heard that.
Were you there at Camp Shelby when the big fire from? It was 2 months ago. It was the shoot house fire. It was from MPRCH all the way east to D5. Were you on that fire?
No, I retired 2 years ago.
Okay.
And I know you know Cliff, and he keeps wanting to call me to help on fires, but they're not letting him do it. So
I've got a funny story about Cliff Willis. He's a good friend of mine. A good friend of mine.
I got a bunch of them.
Yeah. So a heads up on this. So back when I was in Jones, a friend of mine, he hired me and a friend of mine to burn with him, and it was a 40-acre block of longleaf that the NRCS had. It was a cost share program, and we were out there burning. And long story short, the forester was in his 70s at that time, and he hired me and Grace McAlpin to go out there and burn with him, and the fire jumped.
Imagine that.
Super high wind speed. I mean, it was crazy out there. And guess who pulls up? Cliff Willis and Josh Brock to save the day. Yeah. And that was my first time meeting Cliff Willis. I've always been close to him ever since then. But that was back in 2020. So that's where all the fire stuff started for me, at least. So yeah, good guy for sure.
Oh yeah, and Cliff was I knew him, but before he was even an equipment operator for the Forestry Commission. He was just a crew member.
Really? That's awesome.
Yeah. And that's back in the early 90s, I think it was. He was young. Yeah. He was maybe 19 or 20. And
that's awesome.
but he's pretty famous for sinking dozers.
Yeah.
There's
Let's
pictures of him with a dozer up to the roof in the mud.
Oh.
now Seth hadn't gone that deep with one.
Yeah. Give him
Uh,
time.
not yet.
Well,
I'm
not
I'm going. I'm
not
going
here.
cliffs, uh, in Hancock County. Yes, there's a
Yeah,
road down there.
there.
There's a road down there, Texas Flat Road down there in Hancock
Yeah,
County, and I've sunk one pretty good down there before. So I used to work from like Lamar County to Hancock County,
yeah.
and
You were
I
on
was a
the.
technician in 44, and I've got some good stories about getting stuck down in those areas. So
Yeah, you would. Or what's the south end of the county there? Old Lower Bay Road.
yes, yes,
Many times.
Now,
yes.
what's starting fires down there that far south? I mean, you're almost to the water.
Yeah, it is just north, but there's a lot of marsh grass. But
Really?
That's it.
And
yeah, yeah, that's people setting fires, and in the southeast especially, the Native Americans set fires, kept it open
yeah,
for game and for hunting and agricultural purposes. The early settlers did the same thing,
yep, absolutely. Even
and
more.
even
They said if it's
even
good to burn it every 3 years, let's do it
oh yeah,
every year. It's going to be even better.
That's the truth.
can be. You better let it. Sometimes you gotta let it sit out a year because it won't get it. You won't get good effects, but it don't hurt. I got a 2-year rotation on my little 2-acre woodlot behind me. So I try to do it fairly often. That way it doesn't get away from me.
Right, right,
But fire's a natural part of the ecosystem. And
Yep.
most of the ecosystems in the world have some fire history.
right.
And
Well,
the longleaf pine and ponderosa, longleaf pine in the southeast is averages every 3 years. You get ponderosa pine in the west is can't remember. It's like 15 or 20 years, which a western rotation is a lot longer because things don't grow as fast. But
well, let me ask you
no,
this: do
but
they even use prescribed fire out west?
yeah, they
That's
do
why I
some.
thought they had all the wildfires is because they weren't clearing the stuff off the floor of the forest.
It is they don't do as much as they need to do, but it is harder to do it because they've got slope.
The
They've
terrain,
got drier conditions, and we've got here. Our average rainfall in South Mississippi is 60 inches of rain,
right?
which makes stuff grow like crazy. But it's also we got the soil moisture. The fire's not going to eat under our fire lines, and it's a lot easier here. The barriers are good to hold. Most of the big creeks got water in them. Even a branch, a ephemeral stream. The branch is the local southern term.
Right.
And when people would come from out west to come here, I said, a branch isn't a stick you're going to pick up and hit somebody with. It's an ephemeral stream, and that's just the word you're going to use when we're talking about it. So don't go looking
Right.
for a stick when I'm talking about the branch. So a
Right.
lot of
Like,
times that'll stop fire. So we've got a lot of advantages. It's easier here. And out west they could do it, but it's a lot harder. I know
right.
my son has gotten into this line of work, and my wife is not real happy with me about that, but he got a taste of it and he likes it too. And he's working on his burn boss type 2 right now. And he's got some prescribed burns scheduled for next month in Southern California area. And they're a 1/4 acre or 1
Wow.
acre. There's a series of them, but they're all real small like that. 1 acre. I think he told me the largest one is 4 acres. And I said, that's a type 2 prescribed burn.
That's
Whereas we
burning the
burn,
backyard.
Seth talked about 200 acres and the Forest Service, because we'll use aerial ignition, we're do 2,000 to 3,000 acre prescribed burns sometimes, and there's the interstate right there, or U.S. Highway 49 right there, and you got to play with the wind direction where your smoke's going to go, because that's the fire is the easy part of it. Where's the smoke going to go? Who are we going to impact? I mean, I have when I worked for U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service in Southeast Louisiana, I smoked out the airport in New Orleans one time. Not too bad, but they
Oh, they
weren't
they
happy
really
with me.
appreciated that.
they weren't happy with me for a couple hours. I said, "Oh, it'll go away. Don't worry about it."
Yeah.
It wasn't bad, but it was, disconcerting. But then the Homachita National Forest in Southwest Mississippi smoked out Baton Rouge and made the national TV news, and the forest supervisor got a lot of phone calls about that. But
Yeah.
So let me ask you a question, Mark. So Cliff told me about a time that it was foggy, smoked out 98, and there's a few car wrecks.
oh yeah,
Was that y'all, or was it at
and
the commission?
that there was a number of prescribed burns that day.
Oh, okay.
The Forest Service was doing one, but there was also some private ones right down there on 98.
Yeah.
And I saw some thermal imagery of one that didn't have a smoke. The burn permits in Mississippi or even anywhere in the Southeast aren't really fire permits. They're smoke
permits.
Yeah, that's what it really is. It's the criteria where you can let smoke up in the air and it's supposed to disperse and not concentrate. And there was one that day because in my job back then I was the Forest Assistant Fire Management Officer. So anything that happened around anywhere in Mississippi on the National Forest, I got involved in it. So I looked into that one and I didn't think it was Cliff's burn.
Yeah.
Or Jay Boykin at that time, but Cliff would have been on it. I don't think that was really the cause, but we were the big pockets.
Oh,
and also the largest burn that day that got a permit. So there's a record of that we intended to do it.
And that private fire may not have even had a permit, huh? Those private fires.
There was one private one that did not have a permit. There was another private one nearby that did, but the one that was really close to 98 and right there in that Leaf River drainage.
Oh yeah.
Where Cliff and them did theirs, that smoke, because smoke at night, as the air cools, the smoke starts settling just like fog.
Yep.
And it'll settle in a depression into a creek bottom and actually flow down
with the wind
stream. So, you got, and when you got smoke and a creek bottom, and if any fog develops, then you got smog.
Yeah.
And I've been in a few of those in Southeast Georgia. The Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge had a wildfire, and one morning the fog developed, and I could see my windshield.
That was about it, though.
Yeah, I couldn't see anything.
Yeah.
So we were all parked for about 3 hours until it started clearing up.
I don't want any of that.
No, it's no fun. I've done that on Highway 603 in Hancock County too. That just
but they notify like the radio stations, so the radio stations put it out.
When we find out that happens, we go through the county sheriff's office or the highway patrol, notify them because they've got jurisdiction, and tell them what's going on, and we'll help them try to direct some traffic, especially before anybody else gets there. I'm going to take charge. And I'm going to try to make sure nobody gets in a wreck. I know that the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Mississippi Sandhill Crane Refuge smoked out I-10 a couple times and did cause some wrecks. We do our best not to, but all this stuff, all the weather and fire behavior and the smoke models we use, they're all computer models.
Right.
And the biggest thing with computer models, they're all wrong. But they can be useful. So, nothing's perfect. You're gonna get something, a general consensus, a general estimate of what's going to happen, and then you got to use some on the ground skills and abilities and pay attention to what's going on. And but we do take it seriously. What is that going to do?
Well, one of the things I've always thought about is I should have been a weatherman. That's the only job I know where you can be wrong about your prognosis 60% of the time and you're still getting paid.
A doctor as well, Rob. A doctor as well.
I don't know about 60% on a doctor.
Close
he'd be
enough.
malpracticed out.
Yeah.
He wouldn't be able to find anybody that would cover him on malpractice insurance if he was
Yeah.
60% wrong. But
You know,
um,
and I've worked with a lot of weathermen because we talk to them when we do a prescribed burn, or even when we do a wildfire. You can get a spot weather forecast where they're going to
right.
look at that exact, or when you go out on large fires and an incident command team, we get to actually get a National Weather Service forecaster assigned to the fire to
So
do
when
to
when you say
weather just for us.
right, and when you say a spot fire, spot
A
weather
spot weather
report, what are
forecast.
you talk? How close of a spot are we talking about?
They actually we give them a latitude and longitude, and you can you can do it. That's on your computer. You look at the National Weather Service page for your area. There'll be a map up there, and you can click on the map where you want to, and it'll give you a 6 mile by 6 mile forecast.
I didn't know you could get a forecast like that. I know you can
Yeah,
look at it
it's
real
kind of
time.
secret, but yeah, no, because most of the forecasts you hear on the radio or TV, that's for the area.
Yeah,
But you get
yeah,
a spot one just for this location, and it'll take into account. They're supposed to take into account the terrain and general fire weather patterns, and the forecasters are varied. Some of them will go, they'll just push the button, and whatever the computer says, that's what you get.
yeah.
Some of them will go, they got 3 or 4 models they like to look at and mesh them together, and those are the guys that end up going out on bit large fires. And there's one in the Jackson Weather Service office. I've been on a lot of fires with him, and he's pretty good. To actually pay attention to what the terrain will change the weather patterns.
So they're looking at topography as well as
They
for
look at a lot of different things, and to try to gear it down to a more fine tune that the art of weather forecasting.
well, that's awesome.
Some are good at it, some aren't.
That's like when it's hurricane season. I mean, we're in the southeast.
Yeah,
We deal with hurricanes. I used to love going to Wonderground because you got the spaghetti models, and you can
yeah,
see
and they'll
all
show
these
you.
different things, and you figure out, all right, which one of these has been closest to being right most of the time. Where's it going? And usually, it's right in the middle of everything that's going
Yeah,
nuts everywhere.
it's yeah, it'll be the average.
Yep. And I'm guessing same with fire behavior as well. They can pretty much predict.
There's fire behavior analyst. It's actually a fire position that they take a lot more training and experience um and kind of gear themselves that way. And that's where I get all computer models are wrong, because that my favorite fire behavior analyst, Gary Jarvis, that's what he told us. He said it's
Yeah.
wrong, but it might be okay. You got to learn from it. We'll do it. Look at it today. If it did what we thought it
This
was going to do, then we're
this is a
dialed in. If it
starting
didn't,
point.
yeah, the art form of it. The art of it.
Yep. It's a
Same with
starting
prescribed
point.
fire. When you're Seth, when you're playing with when you're dragging your drip torch around,
Yep.
you're looking at, if I go this way around this bush, the fire does this. What if I do something different? The fire will be different. So you take that into account and you learn from it. And
Oh
I
yeah.
call it playing with fire. You're just
Oh
kind
yeah.
of looking at it. You're not just going out there setting fire willy-nilly. You should have some art in what you're doing. Paying attention. That this is the effect I want, and to get that, I need to do it this way.
Well, and speaking
Right.
of spot forecast, man, like so from Modded Road all the way to the airstrip at Camp Shelby, the Raglan Hills is super steep in there,
Yep.
and it's always beneficial to have a spot forecast for like DOD 10 off Modded Road all the way to, I guess what's that road? I guess it's the airstrip road, and I've noticed the past few burns out there, which was last year. Um, Topography plays a big role in how we burn certain blocks like that.
Sure.
DOD 10 is one of those blocks that has unique topography because the soil type and topography, it just the fire breaks always suck on that block. I mean, it's all sand and just it's always washed out. But there's only a few blocks that we have that we can really use a spot forecast on, which I guess you could use it for everything, really. I mean, honestly.
Yeah, you can. And you got in that weird topography, maybe your fuels are that what's growing in there.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because you got a north, because you're up there where you got enough hills, so where you actually got a north aspect,
Mhm.
which is shaded and it's going to affect your fire behavior.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas most of it, from Wiggins south, everything's flat enough that the aspect or the direction the hill is facing, it doesn't really matter because it's not. It's yeah, there's some hills, but if your feet are dry, you're on the ridge, and if you're
Well,
not, you're in the creek.
you heard me telling when Seth and I were talking about clearing did some hand line or not hand line. We did some
Yeah.
clearing of a fire break. And like I said, I used to be on the prescribed fire team, but I broke my ankle and I haven't been able to pass a pack test since because I can't get my time because that ankle bothers me. But, turns out you don't heal as quick when you're 59 as you did when you were 20.
Oh
So,
man.
yeah. All these guys in the office, they call me, all right, whatever, boomer. And I say, hey, I'm not a boomer. I'm Gen X by 8 months.
I'm a boomer.
You're a boomer. I'm Gen X by 8 months. So,
Yeah,
but they said, you act like a boomer. But
they're giving you a compliment.
yeah, look, let me tell you
Yeah.
something. That when I say that was a steep drop that they were doing, I was like, man, you better walk down that thing sideways or you're gonna tumble all the way down it. And make sure you're grabbing hold of a bush and a tree. But they got through there and that line held, huh, for you?
Yeah, it did. So I've always liked heavy equipment. Um, but the downside, like for us at least, we do tie into like creeks and stuff like that. But that one area, it's so steep in there. There's no way to get like a dozer or anything in there. And so, but it did hold. So thank God, because that would
Yeah.
have been sketchy.
Yeah.
But
And the reason when you talked about DOD 10 and what y'all were dealing with the sand and the erosion
yeah,
on the brakes and stuff like that, the reason it is so important for them to burn is they're butting up against Forest Service land, and you don't burn Forest Service land
yeah,
without the Forest Service being there for that fire. So it's a Department of Defense block that they can burn. So
yeah.
that's what they were doing. They have to keep it inside their block.
And we don't have many jumps, thankfully. I think our last one was a few weeks ago. We burned down off 29, and so we usually tie in on to a creek down there, but the creek was dry this time of year, and
Right.
we had our manager got the phone call from Cliff saying that it's sparked back up, and I think there's a detail here. I think it was maybe Black Hills District came down and somebody from Wyoming, I think it was. I forgot who that was. But anyway, I think it burned 100 acres. It jumped our south line somewhere and just, but we don't make it a, um, a goal to burn Forest Service land by any means at all.
Right. Now,
So
when the Forest Service is burning, if they're burning by a DOD block, we tell them, don't worry about it. Run through there.
burn through
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh yeah. And
The,
and I
we,
think you could probably do if you had a small little piece. I think you just talk to them about it. I think it'd be
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
I mean, but I know we've done some burns together
Yeah.
where your people out there with our people, and we did both blocks at the same time.
Yeah.
Especially when we're using a helicopter doing interior conditions with the helicopter.
Yeah.
yep.
It
That
makes
makes
it so
life
much
easier.
simpler.
Yep. That makes life easier. I guarantee you.
You know. So you see all the drone now though, right? I believe um was Ty Cobb a pilot or was he just an assistant or something like that? Um,
I know Ty is a firing boss, and he's
okay.
our burn boss. I think he got signed off on his burn boss right after I retired.
Okay.
But I don't think he operates the drones.
Okay.
But when they're using the drones, they're supposed to have a firing boss or a burn boss right there with them, directing them.
Yeah. So how many drones do y'all have? I
I
say
don't.
y'all,
I
but
think I think Mississippi's got 2 or 3,
okay.
and they're all capable of dropping the primo balls,
Yeah.
or dragon egg balls to
Yeah.
start do ignitions.
Yeah.
Well,
But I know there's a full team up in the north end of the state.
Hmm.
well, the drone usage that Seth gets to see is we've got some reconnaissance drones that'll go up after a fire and look and see. And I mean, those things have got some phenomenal footage. You can, it's almost like you're
Oh,
walking the drone.
it's awesome imagery. It's awesome imagery.
Oh,
Um,
yeah,
and those drones cost so much money, and the cameras on those things are just awesome.
yep. Especially if they got IR.
Oh yeah.
We used some in Oregon one time and then we'd have them fly at night because they
Hmm.
could use the IR. And one of them, and they would fly for hours. They were with the wings, pretty like a
Hmm.
6, 8 foot wingspan.
Yeah. Yeah.
They could fly for a few hours. They were awesome.
Oh yeah.
And they were flying outside the line, and they noticed a glow just across the line, and we had to get on the radio. And I was sitting in the ICP like 20 miles from the fire, and I was talking to him on the radio and said, no, a little more I think to your right. Go about 5 more feet, right? Go straight, right there, right in front of you. We went, oh, there it is. And it was a spot no bigger than that
Wow.
that we could see with the drone, which if
That's
they hadn't
crazy.
got it that night, if we hadn't seen it and they got
That
it
would have
that
been a
night, it would
flare
have
up.
been a spot fire outside the line the next day. And all that line could have been compromised, So
Yeah.
that was a selling to me. That was probably 8 years ago.
Yeah.
I went,
Now
that's stuff magical.
Yeah.
let's talk about the difference in mop up in the west and in the southeast, because there's a difference in the mop up criteria, I believe.
Yeah. A lot of times they'll go, mop up everything in a certain distance. They say that, and I always say, what's the threat to the line? Stuff burns longer, hotter out west because it's drier conditions.
Right.
They're uh, lower humidities all the time, and higher temperatures, and it's things can spot farther. So you do put everything out in a certain distance a lot of times, or just as far as you can see, 100 feet, 200 feet. And I've been on some, we're mopping up in 300 feet from the edge, which is kind of ridiculous. And around here, as long as it's down on the ground, it's probably not going to spot out. Now, if you got a bunch of brush and stuff, you'll want to put that out because it could rekindle that brush and then goes up, and you got aerial fire and those conditions. Something could spot out.
Mhm.
So
But
around here we don't, especially Seth, you're doing your prescribed burns. Those
Mhm.
are fuel. You're doing an ecosystem burn, but it's also fuel reduction.
Right.
So if you're mopping up those fuels next to the line, rather than letting them burn out, you're not really reducing the fuels, are you?
Exactly.
So that was always silly to me. So we just, if it's not standing up, if it's a snag or dead tree standing up off the ground and got fire up in it, and you can't put it out, you got to put it on the ground. But if it's just stuff on the ground, smoldering and burning, finishing burning, we just leave it be and let it
those
burn.
100-hour fuels.
100 and 1,000, the big logs, like, that's 1,000 hours and 10,000 hours.
Yeah.
Let that stuff burn up, and then you won't have to deal with it next time.
Yeah.
Right. Right. Well, and from what I understand out west, they make you take your gloves off and put your
Oh
hand
yeah,
down.
yeah. You get, and no, that's not just out west here too. How do you know
Mhm.
something's hot? Well, so you take your glove off, and with the back of your hand, kind of ease it down in there, and you'll feel the heat. If you feel heat, then you need to mop it up some more.
Yeah.
And you use the back of your hand, because if you burn the back of your hand, ow, that's bad. but you burn the front of your hand. That's your fine touch stuff.
You ain't grabbing nothing, and you ain't feeling
I can
right.
tell you what the original firefighter told me about what you want to be. You don't want to lose that feeling. There you go. I got through without saying it. But
Hey,
yeah, it was actually that is what they taught us back then.
Trust me. This crew that watches this podcast, they've heard way worse when I got the medics on here.
So
you hadn't watched,
and I have done that out west. I was on a crew. We had a small little. It was like 5 acres, and they actually flew our crew from Mississippi Forestry Commission into that fire with a local IC, and he worked us, and we stayed there for 5 days. We put a line around that fire, worked real closely with helicopter doing bucket work. That same helicopter would bring us food and water because we were there for 5 days, and we actually went through the whole fire and actually did that mop up on all that 5 acres with our 20 people.
5 days staying in the woods.
It took us 2 days to get a good line around it, and then we started mopping up 3 more days, crawling around on the ground for 5 days, and needless to say, there was no shower facilities or restroom facilities or anything like that.
When you're cutting your line, you're trying to get how wide of a line out there?
My standard answer is it depends. Wide enough to stop the fire, which is based on the flame lengths. If you got 6-foot flame lengths, you better have a 6-8 foot line down to scrape. But you're removing the fuel, scraping it down to the soil, mineral soil, to stop the fire, whatever it takes. And I've had some places where that was wide enough, and other places where fire has jumped I-10, the interstates before. So it didn't matter what you did.
So another thing that I want to tell folks is you have to be physically fit to do this type of work. And one of the it's not, and take it from an old fat guy. You don't just prep for the pack test and then I'm good, because you ain't gonna pass the pack test next year. And every year you're taking the pack test. Now, some folks don't know what a pack test is, and I'm going to let y'all tell them what a pack test is and tell them the difference in a type 2 with a moderate and a wildland firefighter type 1 who has to do arduous. Take it away, Seth.
Well, it's, from what I understand, it's based off your agency standards. So we can have so right now I'm actually enrolled in the S131 type 1 class, and I think my final test is June 7th. And so for us, we can be a type 1 firefighter with a moderate pack test.
Oh, really?
I think right now there's only 2 people enrolled in that class, me and somebody else from Jackson. But it's based off the agency requirements. And so, thankfully we can do that with a moderate pack test. But, so you have 2 pack tests. You have the arduous, which is 45 pounds to 3 miles in 45 minutes.
Yep.
And there's a 25-minute pack test. I'm sorry, 25 pounds in half an hour. And funny story about the pack test, 2 miles.
2 miles.
Funny story about the pack test. My first time taking the arduous was about 3 years ago. And Mark, you were the pacer for that. And dude, you smoked me.
Oh,
like, dude.
The first time I did it at camp.
Yes.
I hate that place. It's uphill all the way around that.
I don't care what anybody says. That track goes uphill.
It does. It was terrible. And it goes downhill, but it never goes downhill as much as you were fighting up. It was miserable.
I hate that track.
I did it there again this past fall. And I said, we're going the other way because I know that way it's all uphill. So this way's got to be all downhill.
Yeah.
And so we made everybody do it the opposite direction.
Yeah.
It was better, because the
It
uphills I
was
think were
better.
a little more gradual,
Yeah.
but it was still, I hate that track.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Well, the
But,
problem I've had the past few years is I've had shin splints, and so
oh yeah.
one
But
thing I'm doing.
a good rubberized track. That's why I like the junior college track down at
Yeah.
Perkinston.
Yeah.
Is really good because
Oh, yeah.
it's flat as a pancake, and it's
Yeah.
that rubberized track, and you don't get shin splints so bad.
Yeah.
I tell you what I liked, but better than that track, the 1 mile track is I liked when they were resurfacing that 1 mile track and we had to use that old railroad spur.
Everybody's so I've been called crazy twice. That 1 mile spur was my best time I've ever had
Absolutely.
on a pack test. I
Yeah.
mean, it was like, I
I
think I passed that one in like 25 minutes. I mean, I was booking it.
Look,
Oh,
I'm one of those guys.
Railroad track is going to be real gradual
Yeah.
slope. It's going to be pretty flat.
Yeah.
Well, and also
that both pack tests, the moderate or the arduous, it's a 15-minute mile.
Yeah.
That's a fast pace without carrying weight.
and
Yeah.
they say
And
you
so,
can't run. No running.
And you're not supposed to run. No, they can, and it depends who's moderating it. If I was moderating that test, if you want to run, it's your knees. You're an idiot, but go ahead. Because you're gonna
No.
you're gonna injure your knees because
I-
you're pounded.
I waited until people couldn't see me and then I'd run.
Yeah, you gotta make up time somehow. This past
Well-
year, I just barely passed, and I told them that's the last arduous I ever do.
Yeah.
Well, hey,
So
look,
right now I'm still, you guys are saying firefighter too. Well, any fire line position is supposed to be arduous except for certain ones.
Yeah. I think
So it's supposed
GIS
to be
you can do
arduous, but
moderate.
your agency is allowing you guys because you're more geared for prescribed burning.
Yes, correct.
So moderate is okay for that, even in
Yeah.
the Forest Service. It actually would be RX crew member would be
Yeah.
the position, but it's a firefighter. Basically, a firefighter 2 is the lowest position there is, and then you move up, and until you get past division supervisor, which a division is a section of the fire. It could be, 6 to 12 to 15 miles. It's whatever how they divide it up for management of it.
Yeah.
In the incident command system. So all that's arduous, but then up there, and I'm an operations section chief, so I'm telling those division supervisors, I want you guys to do this today. I can get by with moderate. So, and I'm going to do it for a couple more years, maybe 1 or 2 more years, and then I'm got to find something different.
Yeah.
I
Well-
am getting too old for this shit.
yeah, but you've got it all right there.
Yeah, I know. I could do it.
You've got the knowledge. I mean,
Experience and guile can outdo youth and enthusiasm.
That's the truth.
old age and treachery beats youth and good intentions every day of the week.
That is the truth. Because he smoked me. He smoked me. I mean, so he was holding a good pace, and I was like, you know what? If I hang out by Mark, I think I'll be okay.
I think I
very
do
last-
remember that.
In the very last half
But
mile, I took
we didn't
off.
pass by, but even then, we didn't pass by much. Now, back in the day, I used to do it in 36 minutes.
Yeah.
I could do pretty good, but now I'm just passing.
Hey, you know what they call somebody that gets through that thing in 44 minutes and 59 seconds?
A passer.
Qualified. That's right.
That's right. That's right. My forestry degree and my grade point average is what it was, but that piece of paper looks exactly like the summa cum laude in my class.
There you go. There you go. Everybody got the same slip of paper.
I got him just as qualified as he is. I may not be as smart, but
Yeah. Well,
So,
I don't know, but you're wise.
yeah.
yeah. Well, it depends who you ask.
I'm not asking your bride.
Yeah, no. She'd probably talk good of me.
Well, good. Well, you're doing better than I did 3 times.
Oop.
So if you don't mind, Mark,
Third time's a charm.
Oh,
No,
yeah.
no, it wasn't.
He thought
I'm
that.
sorry.
I did think that. No, ain't gonna be no more. I'm done. I limited out. I went up to bat 3 times. I struck out. So
Yeah. So explain, if you don't mind, Mark, the difference in a smoke jumper pack test versus like our pack test. I was talking to Selk, and he was telling me that the the smoke jumper pack test is so much more intense.
It's
I was
not
going to
really
see.
a pack test. They've got a final test they do where I think it's a 110-pound pack. It's
Oh,
a
dang.
very heavy pack,
Yeah.
and they got to go a long distance. So,
Dang.
so they, I mean, they challenge them
are
a lot more than that. That
are
they
they
still got to
still?
do they still got to do the pack test just like you and me.
Do
Okay.
they
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they
still
do
have to
this
do a
other
fit?
thing as a smoke jumper to
Hmm.
to to be as qualified as a smoke jumper because they jump out of a perfect good airplane and they get dumped a lot of stuff to them, and a lot of times they'll sling it out with a helicopter, but a lot of that stuff they got to carry out,
Yeah.
so they got to get out of the fire, so they got to,
Yeah.
and they carry all their stuff with them.
So do they still have to do that test in the 15-minute mile?
Yeah, they still do the pack test because they have to have that. They got to be there.
I'm
If you got to
talking about.
practice your leg speed, most people,
Yeah.
you know, Seth and I are big enough. Now I have helped pace 110-pound women. You know, basically they got almost half their body weight carrying a 45-pound pack. That ain't right, but
Yeah.
I don't think it's right. I think it should be based on your body weight, which
Hmm.
probably would mean I would have to carry a 80-pound pack or something stupid like that.
Me too.
What I was asking about though, what I was asking Mark is on that final test, not their pack test. They got to take a pack test, but on their final
Yeah.
test where it's more arduous, are they still timing them with that 110 pounds? Are they still
And,
required to do
I don't know if there's a time for it or just to finish it.
just
I don't
make
know
it?
that
Yeah,
because I was never a smoke jumper. I've
yeah.
never jumped out of a perfect air, but I do got a good smoke jumper story.
Go ahead.
In Idaho, and it was a state forest U.S. Mississippi Forestry Commission crew when we could go out as ADs and go on fires, and we were and they assigned us to go help these smoke jumpers on a fire. Actually took us across a North Fork of the Clearwater River in rafts from the highway to across the highway, and then we hiked up the mountain till we got to the smoke jumpers, and we found them, and they lined us out. We worked all that day and all that night, and about noon the next day we were finishing it. And I was kidding one of those guys about jumping out of a perfect good airplane. And he looked at me and he went, "Well, how did you get here?" And you could look down, you could see way down there, you could see the river. I
Yeah.
said, "Well, I hiked my ass up here." He went, "And I floated down from the sky. And when we leave, we're all going to walk downhill to the highway, aren't we?" I go, "Yeah, you got me there, buddy." We didn't have to hike up that damn mountain to get to him. But we worked there for those, and we were there for like, I think 36 hours working with those guys. And then we all were hiking out. We finished the fires all mopped up. It wasn't a couple acres, and it was all mopped up. And we were all hiking out, and we got to the river and started crossing the river. And we were working with those guys. There was maybe 6 or 8 of them. That was it that we saw. Was pretty well. Yeah, they needed some help.
Hmm.
When we got down to the river and the highway, there was 24 of those sons of bitches.
How?
They saw us. They knew we were coming up the hill, and they saw how many we were, and they drew lots. And the winners got to go bush up for the whole rest of the stay. And a few guys helped us work a little bit, lined us out, kind of supervised us, making sure we're there.
Yeah. Yeah.
But those guys, and they got paid just as many hours as I got paid on that fire. But
Wow.
I always thought
Yeah.
that was pretty funny.
Now, is there? There's a per diem that goes and a hazard pay that goes when you're dealing with those big fires, right?
Yeah, if you're a federal firefighter, um, and per diem it depends. If you're self sufficient, you're going to get your meal allowances because you got to fend for yourself. If you're We go to fires in the southeast, we're almost always in motels, and that's part of the per diem. You get reimbursed for your motel. But you go out west, you're in a fire camp. So
Right.
you're sleeping in a tent on the ground, and so there's no cost for the hotel. And they've got a large camp will have caterers that
So
you
they're
actually
feeding you.
so you're getting fed, so you don't get your per diem for that because they're taking care of you. You know, you might get it for on the way there and on the way back, but so that kind of it really varies, especially during COVID. Actually, there was a couple fires I went to in western Colorado that we were on per diem the whole time because they didn't want to set up a fire camp because that gap. Actually, in fire camps, there is a lot of sickness that comes with that. And you get
Right.
1,000 people all living in the same place. We used to call it the camp crud.
Yeah. Yeah.
You get viruses go, when you're going up to the catering trucks or big semi trucks that are set up like a kitchen. And so there's steps going up to them and coming across where you get your food and then go down. When you're going up them steps, never touch the railing because
That.
there's a wash station and they make you wash your hands. But in between washing your hands and you go up that railing, everybody's going like this. And
Yep.
so
And
that
not only that, when you get in that trailer, do they have an HVAC system in there to keep those cooks from burning up?
I don't know what they do. They're
If
actually, a
it
lot of them are pretty good, very good food.
well,
And they'll
what
have a
no,
salad
what I'm
bar set
talking
up.
what I'm
It's pretty good. Some
what
of them
I'm
are better
talking
than others, of course.
what I'm talking about is they have an air handling system in there, so you aren't sweating down when you go through that kitchen.
Yeah,
So
probably,
filters, if
probably,
it's an
maybe not
air,
though, because we're talking, 15% humidity in the West. So
oh yeah,
really,
I didn't think about that.
there's no air conditioning. No, there's no air conditioning.
Oh, okay.
It's a lot, and that's the biggest reason and I have been in some camps, in Fort Davis, Texas. We had a camp, but you're at higher altitude, so it wasn't, the nighttime was okay. And in Tennessee, Eastern Tennessee, one Halloween weekend, we had a camp set up.
Well, I have a question about because I mean you live in South Mississippi. You talked about how flat it is in the area you're in, and it is. You are what 200 foot above sea level. What is
My
it
house is
like?
on a ridge. My house is on a ridge, and I am actually 200 feet above sea level.
Right, that's what I'm saying. So you're 200 foot above sea level. You get called out and you go to Colorado. How
So
much time does it take for you to get to where you can actually breathe? And hey, I don't care if you did the pack test when you got this good heavy
no,
air down here. What's it like when you're up there?
yeah, that takes about a week to get acclimated.
Yeah,
You
I
got to
need
take
a
that into account. That I'm gonna be a little bit slower than you boys. Go on
yeah
up.
So the
yeah I
typical detail is what, 2 weeks?
Pardon?
The typical detail is what, 2 weeks, 3 weeks?
It's usually 2 weeks, can be three if you extend to 3 weeks. Yeah. 14-day detail is the standard.
Okay.
But I have been on some where they extended us to 21 days.
Mhm.
We took 2 days. Actually, when I went to Colorado last time, we did a 21-day detail there, finished out that fire. They gave us 2 days off, and then we did went to Oregon and did another 21-day detail. So
Mm.
that's, over 6 weeks I was away from home.
did
Man.
back to back details.
Yeah. Without,
I,
without going home. And I've done a month more than a couple times, but that's the longest I ever did. And my wife wasn't real happy about it either.
so did you ever share a fire line with some of the convicts? I've seen the
Yeah.
documentaries where they've got convicts working the fire line.
Yep. In Nevada, actually, our fire camp was at the prison in Nevada one time near Pioche, Nevada. And we worked the fire with the convict crew was on our division. Those guys, they worked hard. They did good. Funniest thing is, at that camp, they didn't have shower facilities, but they would group us up and escort us in like 8 or 10 at a time to actually go into the prison and take a shower.
Wow.
Don't drop the soap.
That was a kid and one young Barry Garden, Barry? he's forestry commission farther north in Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
And but he was a young 22-year-old little blonde kid, and he went in there with me, and they had the prisoners kind of pushed back, but they were right there, and they went, "Hey, little blonde boy, come over here."
Yeah.
And Barry's going, Mark. I said, Barry, just that's all right. They're just harassing you. We're just going to go in here. We're going to take the quickest shower of our lives.
That's like, wonder why they call him Jingle. I don't know, but you're going to find out before me.
Yeah, they got. But the same place, and I do this when you start talking about really good food, I always go, the best steak I ever ate was at a prison in Nevada.
Huh.
And then I just wait for somebody to go, prison? But it really was. The prisoners cooked for us too. And that steak filled up the plate. Boom. And you had to put your baked potato on top of it. And little plastic knives and forks?
Yeah.
You could almost cut that steak with the fork. It was that tender. It was it was incredible. I don't know what they were doing, or they were.
Are they eating that good in the prison?
The best steak I've ever had was at a prison in Nevada.
Are they eating that good in the prison, or were they just feeding y'all that good?
But it's Nevada, they have a lot of cattle out there, so.
Yeah.
So whatever it is, it was good.
That's like a Parchment Farm. That was a farm. They were growing their own food out there.
Yeah.
So they might be using the cattle. They might be ranching up their own beef.
Yep.
How they butcher that though? Surely they aren't letting those guys get hold of the butchering tools.
They've got all that. They probably have teaching them
trades.
But there was there used to be a hotshot crew that was a prison crew from Utah.
Really?
So prisoners, a lot of in California uses a lot of prison crews. It's giving them something productive to do, rehabilitating people, give them something to job. A lot of them have gone on into the fire. It's become good firefighters.
Right, and it's like good. Cal Fire, right? Cal Fire is private.
Yeah, California. Cal Fire. I think that's what they are now. Yeah, they're a really good organization.
Yeah,
for the most part.
I watched
I've worked with a lot of them from time to time, and actually, an engine strike team pulled up to me one time, and I needed a hose lay put in like for a quarter mile, and I figured, well, that's going to be a few hours. That guy came to me in like an hour and a half and said, "We're done." I went, "Oh shit!" And it was good. They did some good work. They had it down pat,
That's like the E4 Mafia. They say if you want to get something done, because all they want to do is not do anything. But if you catch them and tell them they got to do something, if you got 2 days worth of work, say when y'all get done with this, you can leave. They'll be done in half a day.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They know how to do it, or they know how to eke it out.
Right.
These guys are good.
I have one last question.
All right.
So, Mark, if there's what would be your advice to a new? I've been doing fire for about 7 years now. But what would be your advice from an old guy to a young guy in fire? My uncle was a firefighter in Birmingham for 30 years, and he always told me that the old guys are the smart guys. And so, what's your advice to somebody who's just starting out? I say starting out, who's new in fire, pretty much, for the future.
Awesome question.
Don't be afraid to position yourself to move up. Don't be afraid to take charge. And if you're paying attention and keeping your eye on the fire and learning from every fire you go to is going to teach you something different.
Yep.
And I say I've been doing this for a long time, but I don't think I know it all. I pay attention, and I tell the young firefighters, if you are worried about something, why don't you say something to me? Because I may be old and jaded and not be paying attention.
Yep.
You might see something that I might miss. So I'm not afraid to listen to the younger people out there to figure out what's, because if they're worried, they need to bring it up.
Yeah.
Well, I try to teach them that. Just don't be afraid to speak up. I mean, if you're worried, let me know. And I'll explain it to you. If I'm not worried, I'll tell you why I'm not worried. But it also might make me stop and think. So, I hit a certain level that I really enjoyed, which was a division supervisor, and I didn't want to be an operations section chief. So you got to be, but you got to move up because old guys like me got to move on, and we can't do it forever.
Yeah.
So people need to move up, and don't be afraid to speak up.
Copy that.
There you go. That's great advice. That's great advice. And with that, I think we're gonna call this an episode. Look,
All right.
if y'all want to have us talk about anything, or if you've got a story that you don't want to come on and be a guest, but you got a story that you'd like for us to talk about on Gettin 10-8, you can do so by emailing us at gettin108@gmail.com. And as you can see down here in the very bottom of your screen, there's that email address. Just go ahead and email us at gettin108@gmail.com, and we will read every email. I promise. We'll probably respond to them as well. If they're really good, we'll probably put them on the air and be talking about them, and we'll give you credit if you'll let us use your name. So anyway, again, thanks for joining us this week. We'll be back next week. See us then. No telling what we're going to be talking about then. Y'all take care. Thank you so much, my guests, Mark Jamieson and Seth Williams, again for coming on the show today. Y'all take care. We're getting 10-10.